Oh, Sister Luna, she is looking so much cute in her shark hijab. Remember, if you like the videos, to like, sub, silly, comment, share, support the channel, or she will release her iblis, and there will be no peace. MashaAllah, Sister Luna, she is go to do misbehavior. She is very haram. I had to switch it up. You got to switch it up sometimes, right? Anyway, so we're talking about, in this, I'm going to show some examples that I've given many times, I guess. And maybe a couple new examples talking about stuff. Why maybe archaic games having less options sort of adds more options, right? And that's something I talk a lot about, that even though you would think that newer games should be more complicated, a lot of times there's complexity and redundancy. Just because just something simple can cause such a drastic effect, and not having all these different, game system mechanics can actually make games complicated, right? So, I want to talk about specifically the idea of no counter hits in video games and one button throws, right? So let's look at this. And I've given some of these examples before. So let's say that old Ryu right here, he's going to jump in on Zangief, right? And to beat Zangief's lariat, Ryu has to do a early jump fierce in this situation, let's say, right? So Ryu does an early jump fierce, right? Because from this distance, you can actually beat Zangief's lariat. So he beats it, but remember, to beat Zangief's lariat, you have to do a early attack. And there are no counter hits, right? So remember, in old school Street Fighter, there was this idea of taking a hit to get a throw. Some people call them sack throws. I'm sure there's some other names for it. I guess I'm too old to even remember what we called it when I was a kid. I think we called them sack throws, or just taking a hit to get a throw, right? So basically, this would put you in a position, though, where then Ryu lands and he automatically gets grabbed. Do you see just a simple interaction right there? A game without counter hits, and a game, a lot of people don't like one button throws. And, I'm kind of I always think and that's why I said if I was going to make my own Street Fighter game, I've said before, I like counter hits, but these kind of specific situations, I would not actually have counter hits do more stun from jumping attacks, because it leads to interesting situations like this. On the ground, it's fine because, you can get different links and all this kind of stuff. But specifically in the air, I would not have counter hits do more stun. More damage is fine, but, more stun, no, because it leads to these interesting situations. So again, boom. Let's watch this boom. But he gets grabbed, right? That's pretty, and we're going to show some more examples of this kind of stuff. So let's look at something more like this, right? So say, because normally, if we're to think, Ryu jumps here, boom, 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 dizzy combo. So what happens right there is, if you know old school Street Fighter, Ryu's jump strong, and I've made many videos about this. Oh my god, look at the forearm shit. Look at the forearm shit. Damn, I'm looking. Okay, so anyway, if you know old school Street Fighter, Ryu's jump strong, and I've made many videos about this. It has a ton of hang time, and it actually has a deceptive amount of priority. Hitbox, hurtbox, right? So if you do this, it will beat Zangief's lariat even as a reversal. And it leads to Ryu's dizzy combo. But there's a caveat to Ryu's old school Ryu jump strong, right? And that would be, it actually doesn't hit ducking characters. Isn't that pretty crazy? So Zangief can duck it. And because there are one button throws, this adds to this situation right here. Well, if Zangief guesses that, you get thrown, because Zangief has ducking throws. So do you see, again, we've added an archaic game, a fucking archaic game with less system mechanics than new school games, has a sort of mind game that is not even possible in new games, right? And again, when I talk about throws and all this kind of stuff, I do like, I think it's kind of, it's like, I'm not against, having the two button throws when you can option select, because I do think it doesn't feel bad to do. Like, it's not terrible, but I lean to the idea of liking one button throws and one instantaneous throws. I think I should name, right? I should call it instantaneous throws, right? So let's look at another example here, right? And I'm gonna go off on a little caveat here, right? Let's say we're playing Super Turbo or something, right? And if you know Super Turbo, right, they gave Guile, that's pretty crazy, right? There's another thing. I could make a video. Normally when I talk about proximity normals and why I think they're better, you know what I mean? Because it adds different things, and this could be an example for that as well. And just like, characters like Shotos and everything like that, they should not have a stand strong that hits you ducking, all that kind of stuff. It leads, I've made so many videos about why taking away proximity normals have actually made Street Fighter more boring, but I guess we'll kind of talk about it here, going through other things too, right? So, but anyway, what I'm showing right here is that in Super Turbo, and probably other games as well, depending on the normal you're doing, its proximity activation, whatever you want to call it, is potentially different. So Guile, at the same range where he is getting a close stand roundhouse, he can do his far stand fierce, right? So this is pretty interesting because now Guile's close stand roundhouse is not something you see very often in Super Turbo. But it does beat some moves for free, especially because its proximity activation, whatever you want to call it, is so lenient, right? So, boom. It beats some moves for free. And I think you would be surprised at how many moves it can beat for free, but I think one of the reasons maybe you don't see it is kind of specific because, and I think I showed it in this video, because if you recall, say, when you think about a old school Super Ryu versus Super Turbo Ryu, like Ryu, like, his footwall, you'll see the hurt box. Like if the move is in front of him, his priority is very extreme, right? But if the move is like down on him, like Ryu, old whatever, newer Ryu has better priority coming down on the guy. Old Ryu has better priority going forward towards the guy, if that makes sense. But anyway, so it means he can be anti-aired by some moves better for free. But say if he was going to try to say kick an uppercut or something like that, or if you're like checking him with like a fierce or something like that, old Ryu wins. But anyway, so again, not a move you see very often, but you'll even see here. I even go for Ryu's super powerful jump roundhouse that people talk about. It just loses for free, right? So then this is what we're going to get into more, talking about the sake of the video. So if we're getting into more generally, what do you do with Guile? You think duck fierce is your anti-air, or if you couldn't flash kick, or maybe more, and fucking, low forward if you're doing trips, because there's no trip guard kind of thing, maybe an air throw, whatever, flash kick, whatever. But duck fierce is something you see more often, right? Because of course you can keep a charge too, right? But duck fierce, it actually depends on where you do it, right? And depending on where the Shoto does it in this matchup, right? If they do early attacks, it's more likely to beat Guile's fierce, right? Oh, I think I showed this example here. So see, yeah, so that was the example I was saying. So say new Guile's like stand roundhouse, even despite the activation, I'm so early, you just don't beat that. I think that's one of the reasons you don't see the move as often. Of course, you lose your charge as well, but I feel like I actually see people use Guile's close forward even more than stand roundhouse, which is weird to me because the activation range is so lenient. But I think it's just so matchup specific. People are like, fuck it. I can't be bothered to think about it. But anyway, so normally we get into this situation where, again, boom, Ryu jumping in on Guile will want to do early attacks in hopes of beating something. But because he does an early attack, he can be thrown right when he lands. So it adds this mix-up of, oh, fuck. I can do my attacks extra early because this will beat your anti-airs. Well, maybe not his new roundhouse, but, generally get what I'm going with. I can do my early jump fierce because that will generally beat a lot of his anti-airs. But it puts you in this situation where now it is a throw mix-up. Do I want to land in DP or do I want to try to throw, right? There's a mix-up, not in new games, right? Now, Ken, again, going to how this actually makes games a little bit more complicated if you think about it. Now, Ken is a character that actually doesn't have to deal with this, sort of, quotation marks, because look at Ken, right? Ken goes in early, right? And he's like, oh, well, fuck, I can get thrown. However, let's see, hopefully I showed here. Oh, well, that was showing that roundhouse here too. But even if you do the roundhouse early, you got to remember you can be thrown, right? So you can do early attacks to beat Guile's duck fierce, but it puts you in that throw DP mix up. So even like, again, you can trade with it. It's not like you know, there are options, but hopefully you get them again. And then, so, but if you do this, look at that. Oh, fuck. Oh, shit. Did that just, what happened? Oh, did I only, oh, I guess I only put in one recording of it. My bad. But you're going to, this is basically what I'm getting at. Ken is a character that doesn't have to deal with that, though. Because Ken can actually cancel his jump fierce. So even if I'm doing my attacks super early, and let's remember as well, Ken's jump fierce is actually better than Ryu's jump fierce as well. It tends to win more. It has a little bit better priority that mixes of hitboxes and hurtboxes. So Ken doesn't have to worry about this meta mind game, whatever, like, you know, Ryu does. He doesn't have to subject himself to it because even if Ken does an early jump fierce, you know what I mean? Because he can cancel into a hurricane kick, I don't have to worry about being in that position of worrying about a throw mix-up. Just like if Ken was here, whereas Ryu, you know, he can do a jump fierce early, but then he has to worry about the hitbox, you know, or the throw mix-up DP. He can do, an old Ryu can do a jump roundhouse from certain distances as well. You know what I mean? But it puts him in a position where he has to worry about a mix-up. Now, if this was Ken, Ken can do the early jump fierce, and guess what? He can cancel to the hurricane kick when he comes down, so he doesn't have to bother with that. Whereas, again, Ryu has this sort of mix-up. Ryu has this, like, jump strong mix-up, where this beats Lariat, but Give can actually duck, you know, the strong, right? So, again, there's the dizzy combo there. But guess what? He can duck it. And because he can duck it and there's instantaneous throws, well, you get thrown right when you land. Anyway, so I've showed examples of this like this before, but, you know, I just think that it's interesting because you think about all these new games and they have so many new mechanics and all this kind of stuff, and you have to be able to appreciate that these old games, sometimes having less options actually makes the game more complicated, right? And again, I've always said, look, Street Fighter 6 has turned out exactly how I said it was. You know what I mean? Every character basically uses the system in the same way. Slimer here, Slimer here. The only new thing Street Fighter 6 really does is the meter management system in the top and bottom. Like, no other game does that like that. I guess some people have said that, you know, when I was making those videos, they're like, you know, I guess there is a bit of an interesting meter. Well, I guess, you know, you could say the BlazBlue game, the very first BlazBlue had that meter thing, which was interesting. But, you know, generally Street Fighter 6, the only real new spin it does on Street Fighter is the meter management. My meter versus your meter. It's almost like a card game to me. And again, look at Street Fighter 6. It's turned out exactly, like, think about that. A game that is supposedly, it's a new game. Oh, it's going to be so complicated. There's so many different things. Every character just basically does the same thing. We all use the meter in the same way, right? And I've said this so many times before. Maybe people don't want to admit it. A lot of times when you come back to a game, it's because you like that version of a character, right? You know, maybe people don't want to believe that. You know what I mean? People try to sell, like, it's interesting because people a lot of times will try to sell you a product to be in a fighting game. People will try to sell you a product like, oh, this is a new game. This is a system that you can never have in any other game. And I agree it's a good marketing strategy, you know, because you want to sell the product to the consumer and be like, hey, you can't get this idea of a video game in any other game. But so often, more often than not, these systems that they're adding in these games are flawed and they don't work correctly. So more often than not, when you go back and you're like, man, I want to play this video game because I just like the way that Ryu was in that game. Oh, I liked how this character played in this game. Look at a series like King of Fighters. Fucking how many different versions of every other character they have. Like, fuck, well, you know, this King of Fighters has this, but you know what? I still want to play that version of that character, right? Again, some people think that Karna's Revenge is my favorite game of all time. It's not. I don't know why the fuck people say that. I just say Karna's Revenge is an interesting game because guess what? You think about characters like Karna, Mizuguchi. Those are interesting characters in the grand scheme of fucking fighting games. You know? I agree that, you know, selling the product to the consumer by saying it's going to be a new system is, you know, it's what you should do. But if the system is foundationally flawed, if every character is going to use the system in the same way, you fucked up. Games being more complicated has actually not really made them more complicated if you think about it. If you look at instances like this. Anyway, remember if you like the videos, like, subscribe, comment, share, support the channel. Meow Shala. I'll have Pikachu on the channel again. Don't worry, your little shark hijab. The end.